Sean Jones. And a chair, and also a long-term resident of South West London. It's great to be involved in this exciting debate. So what to expect? Well, there will of course be opportunities to hear from you as well as our esteemed panel tonight. So if you do have a question when we open it up for discussion, what I'd love you to do is to put your hand up, wait for the roving mic to come to you, state your name and where you're from and your interest in the borough, and then ask your question. And if it's directed specifically to a panellist, then do please let us know. If not, we can have more of a discussion generally. Let's just give a little bit of background about this event, because this is really quite different. So, as you know, the State of the Borough is an annual debate that's generally done internally. In the past, it's taken place as a formal council committee meeting, but this year we really have decided to open it up to all of you with the discussion topic chosen by you, Kingston residents. And the topic, as we know, is called Growing Kingston Together, which of course will focus on numerous different areas such as infrastructure, regeneration, culture, tourism, as well as employment, housing and development. And to give you some background to growth, so what is going to happen with Kingston? The population is set to increase by nearly 20,000 over the next 10 years. And with that, of course, comes the need for more housing, employment, as well as infrastructure. And the Greater London Authority projects that a total increase of 4,000 jobs will happen in Kingston by 2041. And the borough has been given a 10-year housing target of 964 houses a year, which is set out in the London Plan. And of course, that is a huge challenge, and we'll be hearing from the panel in more detail around this shortly. And of course, the purpose of tonight is to gather your thoughts and really to help contribute to the decision-making in the future. So without further ado, let us introduce my panellists. So just very briefly, and I'll let them speak for themselves in a moment. So to my far right, I'm delighted to say that Kirsten Henley is here, Chief Executive of Kingston First, and she has been in that position since 2016. Then we have Hamid Malik, who is here. He's a member of the Youth Parliament for Kingston upon Thames. Then we have Andy Robinson. Andy, hello, a Community Development Manager at Ida Verde in the UK. Claudia joins us now here on the right. She is from TfL. And then moving on, I'm delighted to say that Mohammed made it here this evening, didn't you? And he is the University Student Union Vice President. Forbes is CEO. Forbes Lowe is CEO of the Kingston Chamber of Commerce. Liz Green, a familiar face, is the leader of Kingston Council, and Professor Stephen Spear is appointed as the Vice-Chancellor of Kingston University in May 2017. So we are all here and delighted to get things rolling. So what I'm going to ask is each of my panel members to actually just talk from their perspective to frame what it means in terms of growth, what the future of Kingston looks like, and the challenges and opportunities for growing Kingston together. And Kirsten, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you. I often think of challenges and opportunities as two sides of the same coin. So when we're thinking about growth, I've got 4 points which I think we can both look at as challenges and opportunities, and they're definitely points that I've been having conversations with colleagues about this week. So I thought let's bring some of those to the table for discussion this evening. The first one, both an opportunity and a challenge, and without doubt the issue of our time, is climate change, and more specifically mobilising our activity around carbon neutrality and how we think about ways of living and working that takes on board our environment. I see lots of opportunity in terms of jobs, education, skills, in terms of thinking about supply chains and planning. In particular, an interest of mine is planning for places. And I also see real opportunity in terms of air quality, in terms of encouraging people to think about local loyalty to local products, local supply chains, and servicing and being part of our local high streets. That's my first challenge and opportunity. Secondly, a kind of near-term opportunity and challenge, something that's arisen in the past couple of months. And that's about how much influence London as a region may or may not have now politically following the recent election. Are we going to be able to, in the context of a rhetoric that we're hearing quite a lot in terms of this sort of levelling up narrative, are we going to be able to make the case for those big infrastructure investments to government where potentially we're not being seen as kind of flavour of the month or an area that potentially needs levelling up? So I guess there's a real challenge there for us. How do we articulate what London needs and our role as being part of London? But also, is there an opportunity about how we reframe some of our asks of government and making sure that we get those infrastructure investments and that framing of Kingston and London at a national level? Thirdly, I think there's a real opportunity for us to think about quality of design, quality of place, quality of life. These are all things that Kingston, I think, does well, and we need to make sure that we maintain and manage these. They affect where we work, they affect our health, they affect our experience of our places, and I think this is something that there's a real opportunity for us to think about how we make decisions based on quality through and through at the heart of everything that we do. And this is a linked point, and it's my final one, and that's thinking about high streets. I represent businesses that operate in Kingston town centre. I'm sure it will come up in the discussion tonight, but the challenge and the opportunity is about how we make sure that high streets continue to be the heartbeat of our communities and how we repurpose, support and reframe what happens in those locations.
OK, Kirsten, thank you. I'm going to leap in, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to halt proceedings just very briefly because some people have double parked in the car park. So if you know that you have parked, but just by show of hands, who drove here? OK, all right, so I'm going to have to halt things for now and ask people to move their cars because it's blocking people getting out of the leisure centre. I'm very sorry. Was anybody aware that they might have blocked somebody in? And if so, we're going to have to stop and wait for you to move your cars.
It could be the leisure centre.
Say again?
It could be people in the leisure centre.
Blocking the leisure.
We had the registration, we could probably identify.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah. OK, well, until I get another organiser in, then let's continue for now. And when they come in, I'll stop them. So, Hamad, let's talk to you then. And you carry on, please.
Fantastic. So for me, as a young 16-year-old representing young people, the future of Kingston looks pretty hazy. There is, I believe, well, in fact, I think I know, a sense of anxiety amongst young people on the future, on the challenges this town faces. But there's also a sense of hope as well on the opportunities the borough holds. Rising housing prices to buy and rent, coupled with housing shortages, are making this borough quite an anxious one for us, because obviously we would want to stay here, but given how prices are, that's not much of an option for us. And so with that, we're obviously quite afraid that this town will become more of a retirement or a very exclusive town, which is not something all young people want. Growing crime is also an issue. That's including knife crime, including sort of use of recreational drugs, and we're worried as to how that will proceed. On top of that, of course, we've had the school cuts from the general government, and that's caused a massive issue, not only for me doing my A-levels, but also for students lower down, because the thing, what that has actually done is it's made class sizes larger, and it's made teachers who will be more experienced and better leave, which obviously has a direct impact upon us. Moreover, a cut in youth services, like our youth centres, is having a massive effect on us as we find less and less spaces, less and less safe spaces for ourselves to be at. But that's some of the more pessimistic or the sad or the challenges we face. In terms of hope, we are thrilled, in fact, that finally the council has declared a climate emergency, and we are very hopeful and keen to help with any youth consultation on that. Moreover, the regenerations that are happening, I'm pleased that the council has been talking to us, and we're very confident, we're very optimistic on making sure that we can inform a modern Kingston. So ideally, I would envision a perfect Kingston to have fantastic schools, obviously, like we once had, to have youth centres which have a futuristic, which have an evolving, opportunistic approach, and just generally with housing, with youth services, and we obviously want schools back. That's sort of our main concerns and challenges. But we are hopeful for the future.
Emma, thank you very much indeed. OK, update on parking. I have number plates. Are you ready? OK. Hopefully we can... Further ado, Andy, let's hear from you, from your perspective.
Thanks very much, Sean. Good evening, everyone. So I spend my time working in and around green spaces. So my vision for the future of Kingston, not surprisingly, focuses on the role that these spaces have to play in our lives. I believe that we should have a holistic view of the borough, where all sectors of society have a common vision and goal, where social well-being is at the heart of our built-in natural infrastructure. We need to have joined-up thinking between all sectors, focusing on achieving favourable outcomes for people. Our natural environment can play a huge part in this. Last year, the government and Kingston Council declared a climate emergency, and I believe that we all have a role to play in combating this. We really can help this global issue by acting at a local level. My vision is for our green spaces to be a haven for wildlife with biodiverse flora and fauna. Don't forget, 40% of the UK native species are in decline, so we need to work towards having healthy, functioning ecosystems where all species are complementary, having a job to do, and improving habitat for nature conservation. Where our waysides, verges, and container planting link together, providing wildlife corridors along high streets, through residential areas, linking our larger green spaces, and providing safe passage and migratory routes for wildlife. Where our grass verges are used as beautiful wildflower meadows, teeming with insect life, butterflies and pollinators. Where the Hogsmill River and its tributaries are celebrated and protected as the important natural resources that they are, and where our natural and built green infrastructure work alongside each other in a complementary manner. And finally, that these initiatives should be funded and not reliant on the third sector. There will, of course, be many challenges to reach these goals, not least of which will be funding. But another challenge will be public perception. What does a green space look like? The traditional view is a park with cut grass, a play park, maybe a football pitch and a fence around the outside. But what could it look like? It can still have the cut grass, play park, sports pitch, but why not introduce wildflower meadows, woodland, scrub, bug hotels and beetle loggeries, bird and bat boxes, a wildlife pond, hedgerows and more, all in the same space. We have a real opportunity to effect this change. There is a change in momentum and a groundswell in public support for such initiatives. In the last 3 years, we have moved from working with one active community group in our green spaces to 15. I was working recently in a park with one of our community groups, and at the end of the day, I thanked everybody for their help, and one of the volunteers responded saying, "There's no need to thank us, it's our park." I thought this captured exactly where we're trying to get to, where everyone has a social conscience and feels empowered to make a difference. So to summarise, I would like to see Kingston as a leading borough. We're one of London's greenest boroughs, so let's embrace and celebrate that and make it our unique selling point. Let's invest in our green infrastructure and explore nature-based solutions to combat the effects of climate change. And let's engage with our local communities to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. Great. Okay, Claudia, let's turn to you from a TfL perspective.
Thank you. Good evening, all. So I work in the spatial planning department in a specific team that deals with transport for growth. And this is planning transport projects that are able to enable thousands of new homes. I think the challenges have already been stated, so I won't repeat them. But obviously, there are around housing affordability and, of course, the climate emergency. And I think that the opportunities are that we have, from a strategic point of view, which is what I'm here to sort of represent, we have two great documents which are overarching strategies for the city. And those documents are the Mayor's Transport Strategy, which has a very ambitious target of 80% of people by 2041 using public transport or active travel modes. 100% of the population doing at least 10 minutes of physical activity, 20 minutes of physical activity a day. And that means that the majority, we know already that the majority of that physical activity is done via using public transport. We have, the mayor has Vision Zeros that we launched last year, I believe. And so that means, again, zero deaths or serious injuries on the road network by 2041. So those are all very ambitious targets that I think match very well the issue of the climate emergency. Other clear opportunities that I see, and this is a project that I'm working on as well, is the fact that Kingston is part of the South London Partnership. So these are 5 adjacent boroughs that are willing to work together to deal with the issues that don't end at borough borders, but that go beyond, and that this is a much more efficient way of dealing with sort of strategic transport issues, growth, etc., by being able to sort of find the synergies and the opportunities between these adjacent boroughs all together. And we are working with the South London Partnership and with the GLA, producing a sort of high-level document on transport for good growth. So I think that those are the opportunities. The fact that we have a new Mayor's Transport Strategy. The second document is the London Plan, that I'm not going to delve into it because it's a document more of the GLA than of TfL. But again, it's a strategic document that thinks about growth together with transport, that thinks about land use and transport planning all together, and that locates growth on the corridors of mass transport services, which is the best way to plan growth in a sustainable way and in an inclusive way as well.
Okay, Claudia, thank you very much indeed. Let's turn to you, Hamid.
Good evening, everyone. I'm the Education Officer at Students' Union at Kingston University, and currently I'm doing my Master's in Mechanical Engineering. I've lived in many cities in different countries throughout my life, but Kingston has a very special place in my heart. This is where I've grown up. So whenever I'm in Kingston, it feels like I'm home. And this was one of the reasons why I chose to study in Kingston. Kingston is not just your average suburb. This is a borough where thousands of international students arrive every year. From Dublin to Beijing, the idea of UK is Kingston upon Thames. This is where majority of the students live. So when I started my degree, I became friends with a lot of local as well as international students. And after becoming a Students' Union officer, I came across many issues that my fellow students were facing. So with growing Kingston, I would like these issues to be addressed. For example, there is lack of housing. We need to build more houses, not just build any kind of houses, but build affordable houses. Right now, the price of a very basic room starts at £650. You would be very lucky if you can find a one-bedroom apartment for under £1,000. So we need to build more affordable houses as well as quality houses. At the same time, we need to make sure that we don't turn our lovely Kingston into a concrete jungle. We need to keep a balance between density as well as livability. Barcelona and Paris are a very good example, where you have medium-rise buildings where ground floors are dedicated to shops and rest of the floors are occupied by residents and other businesses. This gives you a community-like feeling. Talking of shops and businesses, Kingston University is amongst the best universities for business startups. We at Kingston help students with skills and knowledge to develop own businesses. For example, we are doing a partnership with Kingston School of Art. Kingston School of Art is one of our faculties. We're helping them to create a pop-up shop in Kingston where students can sell their artwork. So I feel like there should be a collaboration between the council and the Students' Union and the university. So the vacant spaces in Kingston can be used more efficiently to give students an outlet for their entrepreneurial activities. Also, I feel like a lot can be done to improve the transport in Kingston. For example, if we have express buses to Putney, Ealing or Richmond, I think this will reduce the traffic, as majority of the students in Kingston, they are commuter students, so they commute every day, and a lot of them use the underground. So we as students, we are all a part of Kingston. We are not a series of isolated communities. So when one of us is affected by one thing, we all are affected by it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mohammed. Wonderful. Thoughts over to you?
Good evening. Is this mic working? I think so. I became the Chamber of Commerce CEO about 9 months ago, and a bit like my colleague here, Mohammed, I came into Kingston when I was 8. I went to school in Kingston and went to Knights Park to do my university art degree. So there's a lot of, I have a lot of affinity in seeing Kingston change over many, many years. But now that I'm kind of the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, it's given me a kind of a new perspective on the whole of how Kingston works. I think the future is challenging, but we actually have a lot of strengths in this borough. And I think, I don't know if it's a particularly English thing of actually talking down our strengths, but we have a great capacity of knocking the good things that we actually have on our doorstep. Despite what a lot of people may say, we do have a very healthy retail sector. We are blessed, and we should never take it for granted, the excellent educational facilities we have, from infant schools through to secondary schools, through to the college and the universities and the academies. We must never take these institutions for granted. And we have a terrific creative arts sector. And we obviously have the natural blessing of the river and the tourism. As a Chamber of Commerce, we have a lot of hidden business gems. There has been over a number of years business awards, and there's a number of years when people and businesses pop up which wouldn't necessarily come onto our immediate radar, and we're bowled over because they are leading on technology and innovation and are very international, and they are on our doorstep. So there's a lot of things underneath the surface which we don't always recognise. And going back to the kind of the collaborative elements that we have in the borough, again, it's not always seen on the surface, but what I have seen is that there's a tremendous goodwill from all the strategic partnerships here to get Kingston going forward. So I think there's a lot of strength in that collaboration, and it's certainly, in my 9 months, has really opened up, and there's a genuine desire to move things forward. We are certainly not perfect, but we are working incredibly hard behind the scenes here. The challenges, the obvious high streets, which we've talked about, and that's not just in Kingston Town Centre, this is across the borough. I think we always have to make sure that we are not completely Kingston Town Centred. Looking at the New Maldens, the Chessingtons, the Tolworths, we do need to keep an eye out on how they are progressing. Without stating the blindingly obvious, there are considerable financial burdens on the council. It's not just lip service when people say the budgets are tight. There are genuine strains. The ability to grow affordable housing, we have talked about this. I can see that there's a huge danger that we price ourselves out of the market. As you pointedly sort of said, we could become a retirement home if we're not careful. We have to regenerate. One of the advantages of talking to other local chambers has been clearly seeing how from Wandsworth to Hounslow, when the council, the chamber and businesses and the strategic partnerships work together, creating regeneration and looking at affordable homes, it gives the whole place a lift. The chambers who can see that there isn't any of that, it's going stagnant. So we do have a bit of a choice of that. I think one of the broader things with Kingston, because there are a lot of strengths, is sometimes I personally think we need to find kind of a true identity for Kingston. Sometimes I'm not entirely sure that we know what we're going out on. And I think on a business proposition, if you're ever going to try and sell something as a business proposition, you need to know what your strengths are. And I think sometimes we get a little bit unsure which foot we're going to go forward with. And then a final general thing, and I appreciate this is slightly going off the point in terms of a business kind of perspective, but I think one of the things which we've suffered as a country, and certainly from communities across the board, is over the last couple of years, particularly last year, is that I think we need to learn how to disagree better. I know this has come across in some newspaper articles, but I really think we need to appreciate and actually start listening to what people are saying, be a little bit empathetic, and nobody wins an argument by shouting people down. We need to actually learn how to disagree a little bit better. So that, to me, is one of our challenges. But I think if we're not careful, we can be in danger of talking ourselves down when we do have a lot of good strengths in this borough. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Rob. Over to you, Liz.
Thank you. So the question we were posed is, what does the future of Kingston look like? And I want to start off by saying it's not my role, my job, to define the future of Kingston, which may seem a bit strange as I'm leader of the council, but it's not just the council's job to define the future of Kingston. It's not the panel and the organisations that we represent or the other organisations that operate. It's the collective between all of us, between the residents, the people who visit, the people who study here or work here, to define the future of Kingston. And I think that's really important to remember, because quite often, and I know with some of the questions coming, it's what is the council doing about this? What is the council doing about that? We are one part of what is happening within Kingston, and we can shape that, and we want to work with people to shape it, but it is not down to us to define what that future should be. The problem that the challenge was the next part, and the opportunities. And I think the major challenge is squaring the circle. Most people recognise we need more homes. They recognise there is a housing crisis within the country, and you've heard from some of the young people here about some of the experiences that they face. But whenever we have a potential site which could be developed, there is always an issue with it. So it's overdevelopment, it's too tall, it's too dense, it's the wrong design. It's to do with greenbelt or metropolitan open land or back garden development. It's the wrong sizes of property in terms of, you know, too many studios, not enough 3 beds. The affordability mix is not right in there. It's frankly just totally unaffordable quite often as well. And then what about the infrastructure that goes with it? Yes, the transport system's working with TfL, but the schools, the doctors, these are the things that people come because they worry about what will happen if a new development of housing goes up near them. But we're not alone in that problem. Pretty much every council that I speak to through the Local Government Association faces the same problems, and we do talk about it and try and learn from each other in what has worked and what hasn't. But I think the main key to it all has to be to do with community engagement. It has to be about talking, and it's really coming back to Forbes' last point. I couldn't agree more. Residents and businesses and people who work here will have different opinions on what is right for an area and how it should look in the future and how it should grow in terms of jobs and homes and infrastructure. And we need to understand each other's points of view. We need to listen to each other's points of view so that we get a greater understanding of the overall need within the borough as it exists now and as it will move forward in the future. But I'm just going to leave it there, actually, because what I really want to do, there are lots of councillors across the audience here as well this evening, and we're here to listen, to start to get some of that feedback and information so that we can work together to make those decisions. So thank you very much for coming, though, and telling us what you think.
Thank you very much. That's Stephen.
Right, thank you. So the university needs a thriving Kingston. Kingston is a great asset for us. We've not only been here 175 years in various configurations, but it is a great asset. The students certainly see that, staff certainly see that, and we're not going anywhere, so we want Kingston to thrive. We're also a major stakeholder. We are, I believe, the borough's largest employer. We also have 15,500 students who certainly enliven the borough, but also, spend in the borough. So we recognise, though, some of the circles that need to be squared, as Liz just described. London has the great benefit, but also the great problem that it is growing. The southeast is one of the few areas of the UK which is growing. We're about to see a demographic upswing, and so how you accommodate that growth while preserving what it is that we love about Kingston is no simple circle to square, I must say. I think that, certainly we all need to be working together to do that. Liz has mentioned, the part that all of you would play, but also, partnership between the major stakeholders, a lot of whom are at the table. So as a model, you could look at, we've just concluded a public realm strategy, for instance. The university played a part in that, Kingston First, the borough, we all worked together on that. It was funded by the GLA. And I think that's a kind of partnership model which we would use, I would suggest we use, to address what are complicated issues. And then there are things that just, we can do, but also things that we need. So one of the things we do is that we really do want to be a good neighbour. So we've just completed, and I mean just 3 weeks ago, a major building on Penryn Road, the townhouse. If you haven't been to it, please do. It is, after all, it's designed to invite you in. So there's a colonnade that's pushed out to the street. There are no security barriers. There's cafes. It is really designed to invite the community in and to soften that threshold that often exists between the university and the town. So we're very proud of that it is part of its remit is to be a good neighbour and to invite the community in. And then, as Mohammed has said, that we want to keep our students here. I think it's important for the borough to try and keep our students here. we have the greatest number of startups of any university, certainly in England, every year, and most of those students have to leave. So in terms of the demographics of the borough, in terms of the economic health of the borough, you want a varied economy. Those students have just spent if they're doing a postgraduate, it would have been 5 years here. Most of them would like to stay here. So we have to find a way through incubators, through affordable housing, to try and keep those students here and therefore have a more mixed economy. So I think that's probably my 2 or 3 minutes, so thank you.
Stephen, thank you very much indeed, and thank you very much to all my panellists. We have had various questions submitted via the portal, and some of you have put your names to them and some haven't. So I'm going to kick off with the first question, which is anonymous, and then open it up to the floor. And this is really about the opportunity area that Chessington South has now been shown to be for an increase in housing, in view that the Crossrail extension, if and when built, will mean that supposedly more people are going to be using the station. This is the greenest part of the borough, as we know, so what protection will be given to stop the building on greenfield sites enjoyed by walkers and cyclists? So I don't know if anybody recognises that question, but that's what I would like to put to my panellists. But Claudia, it seems natural to ask you about that one first.
Well, I'll start by saying that the London plan is very clear in that it doesn't want to develop on the green belt or on metropolitan open land. So the mayor is very clear that new housing sites need to come hand in hand with transport. They need to be in the areas that are better connected. And obviously, even if it's close by a rail station, if it's on metropolitan open land or if it's on the greenbelt, it will be badly connected to its surroundings. So I think the view in that sense from the mayor is quite clear that we should avoid building in these areas. I think with regards with the Crossrail, I'm not sure. I think we cannot call it the Crossrail extension. I think that's the regional part of Crossrail. Mm-hmm. Crossrail, as it's the plans that went out from consultation, it goes to Wimbledon, then it connects to the regional branch. This is just a technicality, but I thought it would be a good idea to say that there is no extension to South Chessington. Mm-hmm. You know, if somebody else wants to delve a bit more into it.
Okay, so the plan is to protect that then?
Yes, statutory.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Liz, can I ask you?
Yeah, so since the original Crossrail, and most of Crossrail has nothing to do with our borough, although we helped pay for it, so we just call it Crossrail 2, basically. But the opportunity area, as was defined in the Direction of Travel Council document and then in the early engagement document for the local plan, basically it was predicated on Crossrail 2 being delivered within the borough. And Crossrail 2 would up the number of trains from stations like Chessington South, but from all of our trains across, all of our stations across the borough. It's not going to be delivered in the lifetime of the local plan or indeed the London plan. It's being kicked so far. I do hope it happens. Crossrail 2, I think, is a good thing for the commuters within our borough, but I just don't think realistically it's anywhere near happening, and it's a massive build project when it does happen. So it's not going to exist in the local plan, so we will have to significantly revise the opportunity area because it's just not going to reach to the station. Although, can I just say, congratulations to the hard work of the local councillors in Chessington South who now have disabled access at Chessington Station, Chessington South Station, around the corner from here, which is a great thing. But without Crossrail 2, their 2 trains an hour cannot hold sustainable growth, without a doubt, in my mind. Also just wanted to mention, as we grow as a borough and our population grows, we desperately will need our open spaces. And Chessington South as an area, along with bits of our metropolitan open land, provide that for us. And we have a new biodiversity officer who is starting with us next week, who will be helping us to be able to shape and make the most of the green spaces that we have within the borough, either in our council's ownership or in other ownership, so that we can use that green space the best way we can.
OK, Liz, thank you very much indeed. Does anybody have any follow-on questions? Yes, the gentleman there, if you could just wait for a moment. Microphone coming to you.
I'm Andrew McKinley from Malden Rushet in the deep south. First of all, I welcome what Liz Green said about the biodiversity officer. I really welcome that. It's really very helpful and encouraging to us in Malden Rushet, who feel that we are a long way from the Guildhall on occasions. I think it was 1978 or 1979 was the last occasion when formally Kingston Council, so I'm not talking about individual councillors, but Kingston Council had a site visit of Malden Rushet and the lands to the east of it. And I would invite councillors perhaps to consider in the spring or the early summer, and indeed everyone else, to go and walk the footpaths, the ancient footpaths to the east of Malden Rushet up to Ashley Common, and look back at the vista, one of outstanding natural beauty, although it's not designated as such. And I say that briefly on behalf of my friends like Borough over there who champions Malden Rushet, but we invite you to come, not just on our own behalf or even Chessington's or RBK's, but it's a precious part of Greater London, only comparable really with the London Borough of Bromley, which has a vast greenbelt area. And say, if you could come and have a real formal site visit, you'd be able to see the flora and fauna, which is quite unique down there. The biodiversity officer, I hope, may be able to do an audit of the trees. There are many TPOs up down there, tree preservation orders. There perhaps should be some more. And there's scope for a lot of work, and it needs to be jealously safeguarded, not out of my naked self-interest, though I'm interested, but in order to maintain this at a time when we're conscious of climate change. There's no point in having trillions new tree planting if we don't keep what we have already. Yes. And that's really what I want to invite councillors and your colleagues to consider tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andy. Thank you. Does anybody want to comment on that? Liz?
Yeah. Just want to go. Yeah, we can certainly. I do go down to Malden Rushet. I was down near a couple of pubs just south of Malden Rushet, right on the border, not that long ago. But I will say, I'm not going to say who the biodiversity officer, but they are in the audience tonight, so I'm sure that they will take notes of what you've said there, Andrew. But yeah, I think that organising visits to some of the best places that we have in the borough, many of which will be in the south, but there are some north Kingston as well. I think it's an excellent idea that we can take forward.
Thank you, and thank you for highlighting that, Andy. Yes, gentleman there, microphone coming to you.
Hi there. I've lived in the borough for about 25 years in the same location, just 2 minutes up the road. I live opposite the former golf course, almost opposite the station. It's been derelict, I use the word carefully, derelict, for about probably 5 years. Is there any other sort of formal consultations going on? It's just been dead space, basically. I know you're talking about green spaces, but it's I think it's planned to be a sort of building site at some point in the future. As I say, it's been there for about 5 years. I live in Huntingate Drive, which is dead opposite it. I'm quite willing to have, well, I say me as one resident. I know that there's going to be one road in, one road out, which is opposite the station. That's about it.
And can we have your name? I'm sorry.
Daniel.
Daniel. OK, Daniel, thank you very much for the question.
It's probably
do you know, Liz? I think it is. I'm looking to you.
I don't want this to turn into a one-man show.
Okay.
So, yeah, there was a consultation that it is owned by a private company, the Chessington Golf Club site. There was a consultation, I know, with the local community. I'm going to guess 4 years ago, the local councillors may remember the timescales better. It was proposing to build, but it is Greenbelt. And I know that the owners still want to look at doing something on that site, but we've said, actually, this is Greenbelt. For the majority of the site, there are some derelict buildings on there. They are having conversations about whether the derelict buildings can be removed because we've had some antisocial behaviour at the site and people using it for getting quad bikes on and other things that we don't want it to be used for. So there are more conversations. I'd encourage you, Daniel, to speak to Chris is here, who's one of your ward councillors, or Tricia or Andreas is here, because they should be able to update you more on site specifics. And that would go for anybody with very site specific things. Most of the borough is covered by councillors who are here this evening, who can come and find you afterwards to have site-specific discussions.
OK, Liz, thank you very much, and thank you very much, Daniel, for highlighting that. I want to move the discussion on to talk about businesses and high streets, and I know that I have a question from Andrew, and I am looking to see whether Andrew is here. Wonderful. If we can just get the microphone over, and then please submit your question. Thank you, Andrew.
Good evening. Yeah, my question really revolves around how our economy can become more resilient. So I'm interested to know of the initiatives being supported and possibly considered to achieve that. And just a follow-up question is, why should a new business establish their business in our borough, as opposed to, say, Merton or Sutton or wherever?
OK, Andrew, thank you very much indeed. So a two-pronged one there. Kirsten, can I come to you on that one?
Yeah, so we're an organisation that is set up by and runs for around 750 businesses in Kingston town centre. So I appreciate, to Forbes's point, we're an organisation that doesn't necessarily exist in the same way across other areas of the borough, but things that we do in the town centre very much looks at trying to build resilience through collective bargaining. So a couple of things we do is provide free workshops, free training, free recycling. We provide an employee discount card. This is all about trying to help businesses and their bottom line, but also encourage people to spend, and particularly employees to spend money, spend time in Kingston. I think your point around how do we continue to make sure, or how do we start making sure that town centres are resilient, which I think is that kind of how I'm, yeah. So a lot of work that we think needs to happen around town centres is about thinking about diversifying the mix. So what do we do if retail is starting to change its presence in spaces in town centres? How do we encourage different types of jobs and activity into spaces? Business rates is something that you might hear quite a lot of, and there's various noises coming out of government around to what extent that taxation is going to be reviewed and is going to be changed to allow essentially businesses to take property on high streets and in town centres in a more affordable way. I think that's a really important part of the challenge, but rents, relationships with landlords around 10 years, that's all part of changing how we facilitate businesses into spaces in town centres.
OK, Kirsten, thank you. Yeah, Claudia.
Yeah, I was going to add, again, from a sort of more high-level point of view, there's an interesting point in the New London Plan, which is about town centres first, I think it's called, and this is about securing that investment in new jobs and also new housing as well goes to the town centres. And I think if the policy says something like, you know, if economic activity is going to be located outside the town centre, then there needs to be a report on how this would affect the town centre. So that means I think there's a good opportunity there with that policy to sort of consolidate town centres and make them more livelier.
OK, I want to bring Stephen and also Forbes in. So, Stephen, from your perspective?
Well, businesses congregate around knowledge, especially in a knowledge economy. And so Kingston has a university. So, and it's clear that if you look around the country, that universities can be hubs for the creation of businesses. So we are explicitly now trying to be more regionally supportive of businesses and locally supportive of businesses. And the government is certainly supporting what they call knowledge exchange between the university and local businesses. And also, homegrown businesses, as I mentioned before, our graduates who start up their own businesses would have a home. So I think the university, having a university can certainly help and does help make Kingston an attractive place to have a business.
I fully agree with the notion of the knowledge transfer. The Kingston Chamber of Commerce, if those aren't so familiar, it's basically essentially a membership organisation for businesses from a one person to up to 50 plus larger scale organisations. And really our remit is to support and be advocates for businesses in the whole of the borough. There is, I think it'd be fair to say that the retail element is possibly near into Kirsten's and Kingston First's domain. But we provide a lot of business support, networking, consultations, seminars from HR specialists, and we have 2 large expos, which are quite unique if you look at other London chambers. We've had a Kingston Business Expo for 7 years, and I'm delighted to say that we've had 2 Chessington Expos here at this school, who have been fantastic facilitators, so we're always grateful for Chessington for that. Ongoing this year, we're trying to reinitiate a new Malden Business Forum. We're starting from a fairly low base in terms of the amount of information, but one of the things which we learned at the end of last year from a very recognised business down there is they felt very disengaged with the rest of Kingston. And I don't think that voice is alone if you were to go to Surbiton, Chessington or Tolworth. So we're creating, with our resources, a new Malden Business Forum. And really, everything is about trying to share advice, share skills and knowledge. To answer your question about why a business would come into Kingston, one of the unique things you may not be quite so aware, which we see in the Chamber, is there's actually quite a diversity in scale of businesses. If you go to some other chambers and their organisations, the scale might be a little bit lower. But we actually have quite a good mixture of sizes. And I think for a lot of businesses coming in, if you're wanting to grow, you can see sort of different paths in that you can develop your business. But our main thing as a chamber is to network, to signpost people to where they need to go so their businesses can grow, and to share knowledge. We don't know everything, but we know the right person and can signpost people to go, sort of help grow their business. That's it.
OK, Phil, thank you very much indeed. Does anybody have any follow-on questions? Yes, the lady there. We can get a microphone to you. It's OK? This lady? Thank you very much. And can I ask you to stand for the purposes of the camera? Would that be all right? Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Sue Towner. I'm a Chessington resident. You're talking about retaining this, the youth with young entrepreneurs and encouraging businesses in Kingston. With the fixation on building housing, where are you going to make the space for these businesses? If they have nowhere to establish, they have no chance to stay. Thank you.
OK, Sue, thank you very much. I'm afraid I'm going to look to you. Let's
Yep.
get that one. Yep.
I think there's a misapprehension that the local plan, and indeed the London plan, is about housing and nothing else. The local plan is about the growth within Kingston, and that means businesses and employment space as well. So sites need to be identified where businesses can grow. I think it was Mohammed who said it's very common on the continent that you will have businesses beneath residential. And that is one way in which you grow both housing and business space available. And we need to look at that in the round. We are expecting, I can't find the note in front of me now, too many notes, but we are expecting about 4,000, I think it is off the top of my head, new jobs within the borough, as well as the extra housing. So there will be, but jobs are changing. They're not necessarily going to be the same jobs we have now, because creative industries are growing, tech industries are growing, retail is diminishing. So we need to shape the way in which those jobs and those people that come in to start those companies or work in those companies are able to fit in within the borough as we have it. And just very quickly on the original question, of course, one of the best initiatives that we have in the borough, as Andrew knows very well, is the Kingston Pound. And if anybody is not signed up to the Kingston Pound, Andrew is the person you need to go and see afterwards.
OK.
Sorry,
All right,
Andrew.
Liz, thank you very much. We've got quite a few questions from the floor, but does anybody want to add anything to that?
I think I'd just add to say I think your point is spot on. We need to be thinking about how we create the spaces to allow businesses in all sorts of shapes and forms that we may not even recognise right now are going to be created over time. And that means being quite brave, it means being quite bold, it means persuading landlords to take different kinds of risks. It might mean mixing different types of businesses in streets and areas that we might be traditionally used to seeing, I don't know, we've touched on retail, but retail dominating. And ultimately it comes down to affordability as well, and thinking about how we can taper businesses costs at the beginning of their journey of establishment. So I think your point around space is absolutely critical and needs to be part of our thinking as well as housing.
Yes, and I'd like to add that certainly thinking about jobs requires working together and collaborating, especially the sort of local government and both the borough and the mayor working with the people who know and I know for a fact that this is already happening. So the work that I do with the South London Partnership, there's a huge interest from all the boroughs in jobs. And there are various studies that have been commissioned that in fact have already been done about the economic corridor. So where about in these 5 boroughs are the greatest opportunities for sort of new type of industries, etc. So there are 3 very clear economic corridors, one of them in Kingston, which I think is the A3 corridor, as a matter of fact. And of course, connectivity is quite important for businesses to locate, and that's where we're working on improving the connectivity to the town centres in the borough as well. So that should help. But the London plan is very clear that there are policies around good growth. And this means that it's not only about housing, but about all the other activities that residents and visitors and workers need. And mixed uses is very much at the heart of it as well.
OK. I know we've got lots of questions about the youth in Kingston, but Hannah, let me just bring you in on that point before I hand over to Forbes.
Yeah, sure. Well, obviously I can't talk about specifics of your question. What I can talk about, however, is how we could encourage young business people to actually go on to business and that kind of thing. And that kind of thing really starts from school. We can't have a serious conversation about training young people without having a curriculum in schools, having sessions in schools where we teach them about business, where we teach them basic life skills, which they can then go on to. So if we are to incentivise young people to go into business, principally we have to have that education, curriculum in schools which supports that. Also, if we are to incentivise young business people in the borough, we need businesses to help us on that. We need more apprenticeships, we need more opportunities for young people in Kingston who don't want to go on to A-levels, who don't necessarily want to go to university, just to go on and take more opportunities in a business they like or they might enjoy. And obviously, as we develop, we have a fantastic, I heard, retail sector. As we sort of come to develop that and Kingston becomes more of an attractive and a bigger area, obviously more young people will be more inclined, they'll see more of an opportunity, and when we have all those curriculum safeguards and those opportunities for apprenticeships, that's how we'll get young people into business.
Thank you very much indeed. Bob, coming back to Sue's question about space and...
Yeah, just very quickly, and it's slightly ties on what you've just said. I think there's two points of entry for your question, I think, here. I think one thing which we've lost in Kingston is service offices. It may seem a fairly traditional, slightly old school kind of concept, but in New Malden, there is a very, very healthy, vibrant service office, and they've got very large-scale businesses in there. And having spent about 20 years of my professional career in service offices, I swear that they are such a good hub for bringing businesses together. From a chamber thing, many years ago, we actually had our service office in Norbiton. It got closed down, and that 25 businesses or so got scattered, and some went outside of the borough, and it does dissipate that element of people coming together. I'm a great advocate of service offices. At the other end of it, I do think we talk about startup incubator hubs and things like that. I think it's a very well used and loosely banded term in terms of startup hubs and incubator hubs. I think there's genuinely hard work to actually define what is a good, practical, self-sustaining incubator hub. And I think we need to, and certainly from a chamber point of view, need to look outside the borough, look into different areas to find a good model, because I think it's so loosely banded. It's like, that's what we're going to do. But actually, the definition of it is really hazy. And I think I've spent many years hearing, this is what we need, this is what we need, but I don't think it's particularly well defined. If we can get that definition, then I do think it will close up this gap from all the startups which we are creating and not losing them out of the borough. So I think there's two areas, kind of a more traditional service office and then really defining what is this startup hub look like.
OK, Forbes, thank you very much indeed. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, lots of questions. OK, so specifically around business growth in the area. Yeah, lovely. Microphone coming up here, please.
Hello there. First name Rob, surname Rob, Chesington. I think the council and the MP have let businesses down in Kingston. For one thing, we've still got people in the Kingston, town of Kingston on copper broadband. They haven't got fibre to the cabinet. They're still on about 3 meg if they're lucky. No, and actually we've been fighting for Malden Rushet, and they're going on fibre to the premises very shortly. But none of the rest of Chesington or Kingston has got that facility. Okay. So we need our MP to fight with BT to put us on the list for fibre to the premises. Also, it's not just about shops and that sort of thing. We've got 3 excellent business sites, what I call industrial. They used to be called industrial sites, anyway. Yeah. And in fact, as you were saying about one reason to come to Chesington, we've got one of the best data and hosting sites in the country down in Cox's Lane. I think they used to have forums for the industrial sites, but they've dwindled away, and the council haven't really sort of revived them at all. So, you know, they're not encouraging or doing anything really to encourage businesses to come to Kingston. I know I'd come up with silly ideas, but I wrote to the CEO of BT, because down Bergenhead Avenue, you've got the big switching centre down there, and Kingston Exchange now is probably in one little room. Sorry. And because BT have had this big thing about helping youngsters to start businesses, I said, well, how about opening up those premises to have startups from Kingston University? And my last thing is, Kingston University is about, I think, 97th on the list now nationally. It was 107th. I think it's 97th now.
No, not top 50 in The Guardian.
Well, the last list I looked at nationally, it was 97th. Maybe if you look at more of quality than quantity, you know, well, you know, that's what I'm going to say, really.
OK, Rob, thank you very much indeed. So let down by the council. I have to ask you about that one then, Liz.
Yeah, so, hi, Rob. I don't know if you tell me they're on copper broadband. I have to say I don't know. The answer to that we can find out. I think your idea about forums on the industrial estates are important to us. They are, I think, Cox Lane or Barwell, off the top of my head, is the strategic industrial site in the early engagement of the local plan, and the others. And there are smaller ones as well around Tolworth, and we have these areas. They need to be protected and listed within the local plan that they remain industrial or business areas. But the businesses that are in there, we need to then get them with the Chamber of Commerce for them to succeed. The council is not going to intervene in whether a business individually succeeds or doesn't succeed. That is for us to provide the environment for them to succeed, supporting the Chamber and other organisations to help them. And one small thing that I was going to mention earlier, but I feel like I've been speaking too much, but I am going to bring up now. At the council, the commissioning team, we are keen to make sure that local businesses are able... One of the complaints is you can't get council business if you are a small local business. So following a recent survey, we're going to be soon inviting businesses to ensure, and I'm just going to read it so I get the wording correct, that they can be listed as a local supplier, so council officers can easily identify where they can purchase goods and services locally. So we'll look to create that, and then we will also be able to share that with our larger suppliers. So we have ID Verdi here, who's one of our large contractors, so that they can also share that kind of information out. So we are looking to do that to support those local small businesses in the borough to be able to get access to the money that we spend as a large organisation, and gladly will share that with other large organisations in the borough as well.
Good. Forbes, do you want to add to that?
No, it's just agreeing, yeah.
OK, yeah, absolutely. Did you want to come in to add to that?
Only really just to sort of agree with what Liz was saying, and saying that the partnerships can work, because we're already looking in terms of those very local suppliers and small businesses, in terms of specialist works, which maybe as an organisation we don't perform directly, sort of subcontracting out. So we have a number of small, if you like, the kind of, you know, sole trader type organisations who will go to for goods and services which fall into those niche markets which we don't necessarily provide the service for ourselves.
OK, thank you very much indeed, Andy. Sorry, Stephen, I beg your pardon.
One thing, Rob. So in The Guardian, we're ranked in the top 50 out of 135 universities, I think. And first in the UK in design, top 5 in the world in fashion, best nursing course in London, really strong in psychology, fine art. So, you know, there are areas of the university which are as good as anything anywhere. So just to be clear about that. And we're going to get engineering back. There's a legacy there that we're really proud of, and we're going to make that shine again. And it is, you know, however one defines incubators, we kind of know what they are. They are about getting people who are straight out of university the chance, you know, with a bit of coddling, mentoring, hand-holding to get them, you know, get them off the ground. Some of that we could do on our own estate, you know, with the support of the planners, which I'm sure we'll have. Some of that we could do in the States. But I think it's an issue for, you know, for the borough as a whole, this idea, you know, encouraging employment, as we've heard. And that is from, you know, big employers to small employers. It has to be a whole range. So that diversity and that ecology is really important for the university.
Stephen, thank you very much indeed, and for setting the record straight. Rob, thank you very much for your question. Lots more I just want to take a couple more on this subject before we move it out. Move it on. I'm sorry, I saw the lady there. Where were you? In the middle there. The lady with the glasses. Could we go to her? And then we'll go to the gentleman in the blue jumper, OK?
Just very quickly, there are a few people here who know me as Anne Blanche, Carers Ambassador from Carers UK. I do a lot of other things beside. I'm actually seeing Forbes fairly shortly. What you're missing is the tourist aspect of this borough. I'm a historian by qualification, and there is major interest in it. It's just to highlight it and say there are many, many different levels of employment and opportunities. I work with young people, although I'm an old person, and I live in Kingston and I have done half my life. I work with young carers, and I look after carers overall nationally. Just very quickly, the last Queen's speech, we managed to get the law passed that all carers, unpaid carers, get 1 week's paid leave to look after the person they care for. That is the power of those organisations. We're campaigners, but we're also local people. And I work with the local community, with young people, with carers. And also, I'm interested in the whole of the area. I work with the 5 Royal Palaces, with Century Handicaps as well. So there's a wealth of opportunity for you to develop that in this borough. I'll leave it at that because it's a very big subject.
It is indeed, but one that I think we should discuss. And thank you very much indeed. So let's just talk first of all about the kind of tourism aspect that actually isn't highlighted in the questions later on. So who would like to pick up on that in terms of growing Kingston in terms of tourism?
Well, I'll start off by saying I absolutely agree. We do not do enough in terms of tourism. We have a wealth of historical features, for want of a better word, within the whole of the borough. People know a lot about some of the ones in the town centre, maybe, but, you know, we come past the St Mary's Church, which is gorgeous. Our largest tourist attraction is just down the road at Chessington World of Adventures, which has God knows how many hundreds of thousands of people a year, which I know creates traffic. But, you know, it has a lot of visitors to the borough. We do now have some hotels, which is great, because we didn't used to have any hotels for a long time. But I absolutely agree. And the council responsible for helping to bring forward tourism is here, so I'm sure that he will have a word with you later on, because I know that he's very keen that I agree, we don't do enough and we need to do more.
OK, Liz, thank you very much. OK, can I move the question to the chap in the blue jumper, if we can have the microphone up there? I'm keen to get through as many as possible.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for coming. My name is Alex. I'm a resident of New Malden. I also run a technology business, and I would like to just feedback a couple of things which were mentioned today. Regarding first the Kingston Chamber of Commerce, last year several times my business was actually approached by the Croydon Council, inviting us to join their Chamber of Commerce and talking about the wonderful facilities and help and assistance that they could provide for growing businesses. But unfortunately, I haven't heard anything from Kingston Council. So if I can just ask you perhaps to be a little more proactive in terms of reaching out to local businesses and telling them how you can work with us to actually develop and perhaps settle more permanently in the Kingston Borough Council. Secondly, I've heard people mention serviced offices in the area, and I think that's a really good way of attracting small and medium and even larger businesses. And I would just like to point out one facility in New Malden. I think it's called Adams House, which is behind where Homebase used to be. That building has been standing there derelict ever since I moved into New Malden about 12 years ago. But unfortunately, I think what Kingston lacks to attract these businesses as a lot of all scale is the transport infrastructure and access to those facilities. That building, for instance, is, in my view, a good location, but the Norbiton station is far too far to walk, and so is New Malden. And the road network is very, very congested, and there is lack of parking spaces. So perhaps you can comment how you would help the motorists and other people who want to commute into Kingston to visit those facilities. Because I noted a lot has been mentioned about the building bicycle lanes and things like that. And I really don't think, even if you double the number of cyclists on Kingston roads, that you are likely to resolve that problem. Thank you.
Alex, thank you very much indeed. Liz, I don't want this to become your your showcase, but I do need you to just comment on being more proactive in terms of reaching out to businesses, Alex's point there.
I'm not sure whether actually it was to the council reaching out or the Chamber of Commerce reaching out, in all honesty. I think it was, you know,
to both of us.
Was it
the Chamber of Commerce, I think it was, reaching out. I do know on Adams House, because it's part of the planning application across the whole home base site, but it did sit there. And actually, one of the things on transport is buses are so important to us in this area of London. We don't have the tube. Our train links all go into central London. What we need to be able to do to get round and between our boroughs of Sutton and Merton and Croydon to allow the smooth flow of people is buses. And the part of what South London Partnership, the 5 boroughs together, are doing is lobbying TfL for better and more buses and cleaner buses, because those are what we need to get around our borough, because the train lines are never going to do it for us in the same way.
OK, thank you very much. And Claudia?
Yeah, with regards to transport, just to say that obviously, yes, it's not, you know, cycle lanes or buses or trains, but it is about a whole package of transport opportunities. It needs to be, you know, thought all together, which is what we try to do. And yes, of course, through the South London Partnership, we are already working together and doing several workshops with all of the transport officers in the boroughs and the transport planners in TfL to see how the bus network can adapt better to the circumstances of each town centre, but also how we can connect better town centre to town centre within the full, you know, the whole area, not just within Kingston, but Kingston, Merton, Sutton, Richmond, etc. So the good thing about the bus network is that it's very flexible. It's not like the train network. You can change it somehow easily, and it's about working with each other and understanding what the issues are, the priorities are, and focusing on those areas where we find a common ground, and we want to reach the same outcomes, and that's it.
OK, Fob, just briefly.
Just generally, the Chamber, with the resources which it has, does send out a lot of material in terms of what we try and do. That's the purpose of the expos. So there's a fair bit on social media which does go out. But there's a lot which, quite candidly, we can't always kind of catch up and approach everybody who is actually out there. So if you have come to us and we haven't given you the satisfactory answer, I apologise and I'd like to have another go at that. But it is also slightly a two-way street. We are focused on what we're doing, but if people do have questions, we do need people to come forward and let us know, and then we can start the conversation. If that hasn't happened in the past, as I say, my apologies, and we're certainly happy to talk again. But it is a two-way street. We can't keep talking out, and we are learning and seeing what is out there, but it's two ways.
OK, thank you very much, Bob. Can I just ask, is Leah Goddard here? No? OK, Leah submitted a question, and I just wanted to make her just ask that she felt that it had been answered because it had crossed over. Yes, so one more, please. A question here?
Andrew,
yeah.
Whilst I'm listening to this conversation, I'm just intrigued to let you know... microphone, yes. Sorry.
That would be good. Anna, could you stand up and give us your name as well, please?
I'm a bit shy. The question I have is that as a council, you have assets on your books, historical assets. And it's so great having third parties here who are doing a sterling job. But surely as a council, you will have assets on your books which are audited, up to date, and for business, for social, for care. The council itself actually repurposes and uses these assets wisely, even without the use of third parties. I just thought, do we have anything that's currently on the go that we can showcase, that Kingston actually does have a vision and actually has got something going in either business or social areas? That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
OK. Not quite sure where you're going with it. We do have assets.
I'll make it clear. Which assets do you have that you can use?
Oh, right, OK. We have hundreds of assets, going from owning substations that we rent to the electricity board up to major office blocks. well, Guildhall Complex is probably one of the biggest ones that we have. And we have projects going on different assets at different times and different scales. So one of the main projects, it's coming for the next phase to a committee, is Cox Crescent. So Cox Crescent in New Malden, where people will know there is the swimming pool and the leisure centre. There is a piece of space that isn't being used, and then there is Blagdon Park, and there's lots of bits around it. That asset we are looking to bring forward for a new leisure centre, and with housing and other opportunities in it, and that's going through to the next phase. There's been a lot of community engagement and work around that. We've also got the Town Centre Visioning document, which is the Kingston Town Centre Visioning work, which is just about to kick off, which sort of follows on from the reimagining work that we've done. And we did some workshops around what do we think it is, and we are now entering the next phase whereby I can't give any details out because we haven't launched it as yet, but it will shortly be coming forward to people to ask for what the vision is that we will work with partners on for the town centre in a shrinking retail environment that we know is there, and what comes forward to replace some of that retail that we rely on in the town centre, and how do we shape that town centre to make it suitable. It's not all in our ownership, in fact, very little of the town centre. There's key sites that are in our ownership, some of the car parks and things, and like I say, the Guildhall, but a lot of it is not in our ownership. So we become an influencer and work with people. And before anybody picks up on it, Kirsten is already involved, and Kingston First will be involved in this town centre work. The council's assets? OK, well, Cox Crescent is an asset. We own all of that. OK, so what other assets are we looking at and working on at the moment? So there is a massive list of assets that we are going through, some of which are potentials. Cambridge Road Estate, that is a massive asset, that housing estate.
These are residential parks.
Well, they're a mixture, Andrew, aren't they? So,
No, I'm sorry, I'm contrarian, but I mean, it's about getting the assets. I'd like to see what the assets are.
Yeah.
And then repurpose them, so I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. And there is work that constantly goes on to look at the purpose behind the assets that we own. Are we getting best value for them? And that best value is not just about financial income. Sometimes it's about the social value that it gives. So we would not charge the same rent to a scout group as we charge to a firm of solicitors, obviously, because we like scout groups. But anyway, so yeah, but literally there are thousands of assets that nobody even knows why we own them anymore, some of them, and some of them will be disposed because there's pointless as owning them. Yes, but that statement would not include a lot of detail because if we own an asset, we don't give away what we think the value of the asset is. It's a commercial. Yeah, but the asset register is online.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Liz. I'm aware that some of our panellists haven't had much of a chance to speak, so can I skip to a quick question that I have here before I take it from the floor again? And this is really about the youth of Kingston. And this question is from Praneeth from Kingston and Richmond Youth Council. Are you here, Praneeth? No? No? OK, all right. So let me ask the question that Praneeth answered. A perennial problem, a problem that is happening across the country, youth centres. Youth centres in Kingston, there aren't many, so young people simply don't have a safe place to go. How can we change that for Kingston youth to give people more things to do? So, Hamid, can I ask that one of you?
Yeah, no, definitely. Youth centres is, I can 100% say, a massive issue of young people. Of course, we also did we engaged in the Cox Crescent consultation, and one of the big things that came up is youth centres and a safe place to go. And it just keeps coming up, and the fact of the matter is that we don't have that many youth centres. Personally, when we have our youth council meetings, I have to take an hour's commute to Richmond, which isn't fantastic. So there's a youth centre problem, and we need to improve that. Obviously, with more funding, that's easier to say, but we need to have a more future-looking, a more innovative sort of are youth centres that aren't your traditional, what you'd think, oh, what Sable Stones Table was that kind of thing. No, we need youth centres that have facilities of arts, that have music facilities, that have facilities to just a study room, all kinds of facilities so that we have a youth centre where we can cater for every single person, every single young person, with computers and everything, because not every single person will have access to some of the things we take for granted. So we need, essentially, we need better youth centres in the fact that we need them to be more broad in their appeal and allow young people with more opportunities, and currently youth centres are just not a thing in Kingston.
No, and I have to ask, were they once?
A long time ago. The youth centres, I agree, Hamid, and we need to work with young people to see what they want. Some of our youth centres that aren't around anymore were very traditional youth centres that I may have gone to as a young person, but that was some time ago, and I'm not sure young people today want exactly what I had, although I used to go to a church youth centre, some people will be surprised to hear. But we are looking at a youth services review, and it is about working with young people. So Hamad and the other, and the schools, because he's got an amazing ability to get young people to respond to surveys. I wish the older people that are here and those that aren't here would respond in the kind of percentages that he gets for his young people's surveys. What did you get in the last one?
I think we got over 3,000.
Right, of the young people. We can't get 3,000 at whatever age it is quite often. So, you know, a lot to learn from you on that as well. But we need to work with the schools and understand. It's been a frustration of mine for years, and I don't know whether it will ever be solved. We're in a school here this evening, but quite often schools are locked up post teachers leaving at 6 o'clock. Thank you, Rob. But I'm saying that quite often schools are locked up at 6 o'clock and nobody can get in unless you have booked it. That is a waste of an asset. Some of the assets that we own are the schools where they're not academised. And actually, we need to use those. We need to work with the schools, which is a place that young people know, but not always just that. So we do have work to do on that. We've already had initial discussions about it when we met, and we'll be looking to do more on it.
OK, Liz,
I say, can't do everything at once.
No, indeed, a lot on your plate. Mohammed, I'm going to bring you in. So what is the youth of today looking for, and how can we support them?
OK, I grew up in Kingston, and I used to go to Mitcham to do boxing. So I think we really need some more youth centres here. We at Students' Union in Kingston, Kingston University, we encourage students to not just make sport club societies, but we encourage them to make academic societies as well. We did a research and we found out that if the students are engaged in extracurricular activities, whether it's sports or any other academic society, they are 15% more likely to get a job compared to someone who is not engaged with any extracurricular activities. So I think having youth centres is very essential. We need to have more.
Yep.
More of them, yeah.
Yeah, OK. All right, Mohammed, thank you. Does anybody have any questions specifically around that topic? Let's see here from the lady there at the back and then the gentleman there.
Hi, I'm Sue Matthews.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
I'm Sue Matthews.
Yes.
I think that maybe you don't need to look solely at youth centres and rather youth workers, because I think that if you get good youth workers and you get them out in the community, not particularly around buildings, but maybe walking around Kingston and where youth gather, and involving them and doing things with them out on the streets. And I'm involved in one of the recreation grounds, and I was thinking the other day, we're trying to get a little cafe put up on our recreation ground, and we have lots of young people turning up sort of late at night to play on the equipment.
Yes.
But if we get our cafe going, it would be really good to actually have that open late on Friday and Saturday nights and be there and have a youth worker there so that you're actually going to the places where these kids are mucking about, rather than just trying. You know, I think a lot of young people might resent having a youth centre for them. So I just think that investing in people to go out and work with them, and where they are, would be really, really worthwhile. And can I just sneak two other things in? I was really interested to hear Andy say the groups have come from one community group that he used to work with to 15, and I wondered, and the workload associated with that must be phenomenal, and I wonder if the council have resourced their staff to be able to cope with that, because from our point of view, it's really difficult to get a quick response from the council to get things done. And we've got a massive community that are working with us on our recreation ground, and the frustration of the lack of speed and the way that work's done with the council. And I think it's probably because there's not enough people. And so they're under stress, and therefore they're not answering emails or picking up their mobiles to talk to us, because they're probably sick of us pestering them. And they've probably got lots and lots of people to do it. So I wonder if there's a real resource problem, and if you're trying to encourage lots of local people to get involved in their communities, there needs to be a better support system in the council to do that.
Yeah.
And I think just generally, it's really hard to talk to the council and council staff. And I mean, if you talk to anyone regarding planning, it's just a nightmare.
Okay, Sue, thank you. Thank you very much indeed. So thoughts around youth workers and actually the funding behind that, as opposed to just looking at youth centres. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I could add something really quickly about youth workers. Obviously, we have two really fantastic youth workers here. I won't embarrass them. But the fact of the matter is, obviously, youth workers are vital, they're critical to the development of young people. But naturally, obviously, we also need those youth centres for the youth workers to run their workshops in. But obviously, where there are youth centres, we need to have youth workers. And I guess that's a question of funding at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah, OK. Yeah.
Come in.
Sorry, yes,
on,
please,
on
Andy, on the
point there as well. Probably a couple of points, actually, just in terms of opportunities to engage with young people. We've talked a lot about youth centres and places for them to go. I'll make no apology for the fact that I'm going to start banging my green drum again, but there are opportunities to engage with people at a young age, at grassroots level, to get them involved with their local environment as well. And actually, to Andrew's point as well as Sue's, in terms of assets which are owned by the council across the borough, you know, we can use this very advantageously by community groups. You've mentioned the example there at one of the recreation grounds where you're looking to use a disused building and repurpose it for something else, a cafe, which could be something of a community hub. And I mean, you're absolutely right about the resourcing, but again, I think we're heading in the right direction. I don't work directly for the council, but I do work for one of their contractors, one of their suppliers, and within my organisation, I was historically a shared resource with another contract, but very recently my position has been made full-time. So there is additional resource there in terms of the work that I'm doing, facilitating some of these community projects out in green spaces and improving those areas. And as that has happened, I feel as though there is more support coming from the council as well to facilitate that happening. So there's probably more to be done, but I think we're heading in the right direction.
OK, Andy, thank you very much indeed. There was a gentleman at the back, and then I want to come back, actually, to the green issue, if I may. Could you stand up for me? Would you mind?
But my name's Tony. I just want to build on the point that the leader, Liz, made, that it's more about making best use of facilities. I think fixating on youth centres being a youth centre building misses the point. One example, the school has worked with Matthew Angel, fantastic youth service. When Devon Way was closed for valid reasons, there was an absolute need for a youth centre here. Interacting with the police, the school stepped forward, worked with Matthew, and we now use a large totally unused space at the back of the sports centre, gets used about 10% of the time. And now we started, I think last summer we had 25, now we have 75 kids on a waiting list. So I think we shouldn't be fixating that it has to be the perfect youth centre. We have made that building, we've built a little cafe, we've got a garden, Andy knows what we've done at the back there, they share the Mugers. I just say start, adopt, adapt, improve, and I think you all wait too much for a perfect solution. The kids need space, use the assets, crack on. You've got a good youth service. I think you're not using the land properly.
Okay. Tony, thank you very much indeed. And I think Tony makes a valid point there. Anyone like to add to that? No. Okay. All right. The gentleman, now, I'm sorry to be rude, but we have heard from you. Is there somebody there? There we go. Okay, would you mind? I'm so sorry. Say again.
It's valid to the point about the collaboration between the youth and the university.
Fine. Well, I'll come to you then very briefly in a minute then, but let's take this question from this gentleman on the end.
Yeah, my name's Zach. This is very late, but I think it does need saying. I'd just like to make a little clarification in response to the Vice-Chancellor. According to UK Uni, The Guardian actually rated you 48th out of 100, and The Times rated you 106th out of 130, which seems to be close to the average according to other organisations. I'm not saying this is necessarily the university's fault, but I think it's misleading to present it as something to be celebrated when it really seems to be more of a local or even national issue.
Okay, Zach, thank you.
Top 50 in the UK. I think that's pretty good.
Okay, Zach, thank you for highlighting that. Could we go to the gentleman we've heard to just very briefly to tie in the past few points?
Yeah, sorry, about collaboration, about youth services. What are the university doing to reach out to the school-age pupils? Obviously, you've got education, but apart from that.
Okay. Stephen?
It just
well,
seems
firstly, we can't say obviously education because there's been a very hostile environment under this government to educating teachers in universities. So education departments in universities are under a lot of pressure across the country because that's not the way the Conservative government thinks teachers should be educated. So that's a loss. So we're really struggling, as are other universities, with education departments. And as far as youth go, well, we are one of the sponsors of the Kingston Academy. So with the college and with the borough, we have sponsored a school. There's about to be a celebration of its new science building in a couple of weeks, I think. So we are, trying to do that. That's way beyond our remit as a university, of course. But we are one of the partners in the founding of that school, which we're very proud of.
It's just that, you're talking about joining up as a community. It seems ideal that you've got school-age children, school-age pupils that are either going to university or about to, or, something along those lines.
Well, if you mean, right, I'm sorry, I was thinking more younger pupils, actually. Well, we do a tremendous amount of outreach. Actually, we have a very active program to introduce the university to secondary schools in the region. So we do a lot of that, actually.
Okay, thank you.
We go out to the schools too. We have a thing called the Lab in the Lorry, where trying to get young people excited about studying science. So we take science out to the schools.
Thank you. Gentleman there, and then we'll just move on with... We have another 10 minutes, so just a few more questions, please. And I have some here that I need to ask.
Hi there. So my name is Matthew Angel. I actually the cluster lead youth worker for the south of the borough. So I oversee the session that runs here on a Thursday that Tony mentioned earlier, where we've got a Thriving Youth Club that happens from the sports centre. And to touch on the lady's point before about open spaces, we do have a detached team that goes out. We've recently done some reconnaissance down at Blagden Road because of antisocial behaviour that's going on, but we are a small team. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all. Some young people want to come to youth centres, some young people stay at home on their computers, but all of them need support. And what we need to be able to do is to have a variety of ways of reaching young people. So youth centres are valid. The historical issue we had with youth centres is that they're used in the evening, they're not used in the daytime, hence the schools for the future, such as this, where they are open all day, that we can come in, and we have got a thriving youth club here. However, it is a commercial entity as well, so they have targets that they need to hit. We're limited on the times that we can use it. In the holidays, they're selling their space. So I think we do need to negotiate some more space for young people, as well as outdoor space and community spaces. In Kingston, we historically had a detached bus that was running for 15 years. That's out of commission at the moment. I don't want to break any news, but hopefully we're going to be procuring a new one soon, and we'll be back out in the community doing work. But as we said, there's not one size fits all. And what it does ultimately come down to as well is some investment. So we can only do so much with what we have. And thanks for the shout out. I think we are doing a fantastic job, but we can be doing a lot more with more resources as well.
Thank you very much. Can I just turn our attention in the last 10 minutes or so to the impact of climate change? Of course, terribly topical and something that we're all highly worried about. It's also something a lot of young people are really passionate about. This is an anonymous question that came in via the portal, but I think it needs to be tackled. Is Kingston taking steps to being carbon neutral, we were talking about earlier, and are their efforts the same as they were 5 years ago? Are we moving forward?
Can we start?
Yeah.
So I'll start off, but what I'll start off by saying is that climate change is not something that the council can solve. So what we are doing, we've declared a climate emergency last summer, and we are assessing our buildings, our assets, to look at how they are heated and other technical stuff I really don't understand that needs to go in that to work out the carbon. But officers that do understand it are undertaking that work. So there is a lot more happening than was. We've recently had our first Citizens' Assembly, which is on air quality, which has come up with some recommendations that will be coming on the 11th of February. I'm looking at the portfolio. 11th, yes, to the Environment and Sustainable Transport Committee, which is obviously, it's on air quality, but air quality is part of, for me, climate change and the impact that we can have on it. We are looking at, in the Kingston Strategic Partnership, we are looking at having climate change as one of our key objectives, but we need, because the Kingston Strategic Partnership involves many of the people on this table, but it also involves the health partners, the hospital, the police, the fire, so many of the statutory services, the voluntary sector and others. And we're saying, actually, we need to work together to tackle climate change. One organisation can't do it even in our area, let alone do it across the country. So we have lots of things that are coming forward. The action plan is in development. The portfolio holder responsible for environment and sustainable transport is also here, so if people have an interest, I'm sure she can find them at the end if you ask another question related to this. But there's lots of things going on. Doing investigations into a district heat network, which I believe has received some more funding from somewhere to be able to go to the next stage so that we can actually get a district heat network potentially running both for housing and town centre new development and existing developments and the hospital. So these are the kinds of things that we're doing, and there's a great big long list. I'm sure that I have missed a lot of it, and afterwards I will kick myself for missing some really obvious things because I hadn't written them down.
Thank you very much. Let's just hear from your perspective, Claudia.
I wanted to add in terms of the last 5 years, what we've been doing, definitely there's the low emission zone and the ultra low emission zone that will be in place next year. So this is within the north and south circular, but the models show it has a huge impact in outer London, as well as vehicles that are going to travel through inner London or to central London will have to be all upgraded. So that means that far less, substantially less carbon emissions in the borough. Vision Zero, of course, it's about the same thing, lowering speeds, making a better, ambience in streets, healthier streets for people to walk. The Go Cycle program about cycling infrastructure, in which the borough is going to be exemplary It's already building exemplary cycling infrastructure around the town centre and connecting New Malden to Rains Park, for instance. So all of these are a set of various activities that go hand in hand with sort of tackling the climate emergency. The TfL is also leading by example in changing the bus fleet and making it more up to date. So a huge part of the bus fleet is already Euro 6 compliant, which is a very high standard for buses. And as of this year, all new one-decker buses are zero emission. So it's all new, no?
Okay, all right, Claudia. And you started off with this wonderful vision for the future, didn't you? So it must bring you in.
Yeah, sure. So I think just to sort of echo what Liz and Claudia have mentioned, there is quite a lot going on at the moment, and you know, much is being done, but there's still a lot more to go. We've talked about some of the initiatives which are in place, such as the Go Cycle scheme, better provision for cyclists and pedestrians right across the borough, better traffic management and traffic calming. I would say certainly motorists feel as though their life is being made a little harder at the moment, which potentially a good thing if it's incentivising people to get out and walk or on their bike or use public transport. Installation of electric vehicle charging points in the town centre, etc. I think the big thing for me, though, is slightly different. It's this move towards sort of greater engagement with local residents and actually empowering people to feel as though they can make physical changes to their immediate environment. We've actually got some really passionate and knowledgeable people that we work with across the borough, so let's get them involved in making that change happen. I think that's really important in terms of fostering more cohesive and connected communities. We all know, and I think acknowledge now, that can have a really positive effect on physical and mental well-being as well. So all of these sort of initiatives can be done in their local community to have a positive impact on the climate change issues. There are a lot of projects going on at the moment, but more in the pipeline as well. So things like sustainable urban drainage schemes, effective river management to mitigate against flood risk, improving the quality of planting and green infrastructure within our urban spaces. So things like raised beds, green walls, green roofs, that type of thing, which can effectively help combat the effects of the urban heat island, increase nectar sources for urban pollinators, that type of thing. Basically ensuring that our green spaces are ecologically intact and viable and functioning, which can help sequester carbon emissions and improve air quality. I think if you step 5 steps inside a local nature reserve, the air quality is distinctly improved immediately just from the kind of environment that you're in. There are already sort of tree planting targets in place across the borough to support all of these initiatives as well. So, yeah, there's always more that can be done. We can potentially, you know, should we be looking at sort of investing in more renewable energy sources such as wind, solar, hydrogen, things like that. Maybe start looking at our food supply chain network. Yeah, maybe sort of local-based markets offering more sort of plant-based or sort of locally sourced products, that type of thing. The list is endless, really. We're only really limited by our own inventiveness and imagination.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we are very, very nearly out of time, and I'm so sorry because I know that you all have lots more questions. We will be around for a little while afterwards. I do have to bring this to a close, though, and just to say thank you so much for your participation and for getting involved and for getting your voices heard. There's a survey. We would love to know what you think of it. The conversation carries on. The councillors have been listening, and this is, of course, about shaping the future of Kingston together. So if you could see the survey there, there's some paper copies around, but you will also be emailed if you've given your email as well. And we will carry on the conversation with you, and I very much look forward to the next opportunity that we have. But for now, I've got to thank you and wrap it up and thank very much my panellists here this evening as well.